When we start discussing the New Testament with people from other different traditions, whether Christian or not, it's very easy to get the impression that they are coming with a lot of baggage in their heads, which is forcing them to read the text wrongly, we might think, whereas we are simply reading the text straight. Now, of course, it doesn't take long in engaging with people before we realize that's an amazingly naive way of going about it, as though everyone else has distorting spectacles on, but we, for some reason, are somehow exempt. And this relationship that we have with the material is actually like the sort of relationships that we might have with friends or family members. That when you get to know somebody to begin with, you have an impression of who they are, and then you're relating to them on the basis of that initial impression. But as we know, the closer you get to any human being, the more mysterious they come, the more hidden depths there are, the more surprises, perhaps shocks there may be. And if you want to take the relationship to a new level, you have to go with that and be prepared to revise your initial assumptions about who they are. Otherwise, you are simply treating them as a projection of your own personality. The same is true when we do history, and particularly when we do the history of the New Testament times and of how we relate to that. We all grew up, if we knew the Bible from our early years, with a particular picture of who Jesus was, how the New Testament worked, and it was easy for us to assume that we were just reading it straight, and that's how it was. And then we start to study the history, and we get jolted this way and joggled that way, and new ideas come in, and things shake us up. And then it's easy to imagine, and some in the postmodern world have made this move, that actually all our knowing is just reflection, that all we're really doing is bouncing our own ideas off a kind of a negative screen somewhere, and that we're not really in touch with things that actually happened. And so in renouncing the positivism that says we don't have spectacles on, we're just reading the text straight, we can retreat into saying, no, we have to be so self-critical that really we don't know about anything in the outside world. Over against both of those positions, many philosophers have developed something which is loosely called critical realism. Different people mean different things by that phrase, but it's a double move. First, it's a way of saying, yes, this is how I currently see it, but I have to listen to all these other voices. They may well tell me things that I need to know about. They may well give me a slightly different perspective, maybe a radically different perspective from what I thought I had. But that doesn't mean there isn't a reality which I'm still looking at. So critical realism. And that's the exercise that we go through, as I said, in relationships with other human beings, in relationships with the history, whether it's the history of the first century or of the Napoleonic Wars or the Crusades or whatever it is. We go round this loop of saying, now I have to be careful of my own prejudices and presuppositions, but that doesn't mean that nothing happened. And so over against those two extremes, what we have to do in reading the New Testament constantly is to say, no, something did happen, particularly these events concerning Jesus. We can, in principle, know about them. But history, this critical realist history, is a corporate enterprise. We need to have these other voices that may have seemed strange and a bit upsetting to begin with. We need to pay attention to them so that in dialogue with other people, because history, like all academic subjects, is a public discipline, not simply a private game. That's why scholars publish things in books and articles and monographs and so on. As we do that, we actually can get closer to the reality which we're all trying to study. And after all, the New Testament isn't basically about making me have nice feelings inside myself. It's about discovering something to do with events that really did take place in the public world, the events concerning Jesus, as a result of which, whether I feel it, whether I know it or not, the world is in fact a different place. Critical realism thus reflects the appropriate intellectual and personal humility when faced with the outside world in general, but it also reflects the Christian belief that in Jesus the Messiah, the Lord, the one true God really has acted once and for all in history.